You have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV.
Television addict! Television addict! Television addict!
Hey everybody, Ken Reed here. Welcome to TV Guidance Counselor. I am still your TV Guidance Counselor. Here still on lockdown. Things are changing by the day, so I hope you guys are doing okay. I've been okay and I've been not okay, and I go back and forth. It's a weird time, and it's a lot of mixed emotions, absolutely. But I'm still doing the show. I still have episodes from LA, and I'm going to line up some episodes to do remotely with some people. So if you look forward to the show, you should not have to worry about it not coming out. And I know sometimes things seem trite or trivial in this bizarre, uncharted water, but at least this gives me something to do and a nice distraction and some human interaction, and hopefully does the same for you. It's also been kind of a nice little inspiration to rewatch a lot of stuff with people remotely via social media. So if you don't follow me, do so, please, at Kenneth W. Reed, R-E-I-D, or at TV Guidance, or on Instagram on the same. And feel free to shoot me a message or an email at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com or ken@icanread.com, and we can chat or we can watch something together, and I am happy to try to do that because it seriously helps me, and hopefully it helps you. And I'm trying not to be incredibly angry at the failures and the completely avoidable deaths that are going on, but I'm not going to get into that because that is not what this show is about. This show is about discussing classic television with people who I find interesting, using editions of TV Guide magazine from my personal collection to go through our respective collective memories. And this week, big deal. Couple reasons why it's a big deal. Number one, fall preview, which is always everybody's favorite edition of TV Guide. And number two, John Ross Bowie is on the show. I love him. He is incredibly funny, incredibly smart guy. We have many of the same interests, and also thanks to friend Julia Duffy for introducing us and knowing that we would get along so well. I know him best from Speechless, which was an amazing show. If you're looking for things to watch, I believe there are 3 seasons with Minnie Driver. He plays the dad on that show, and it is a great show. It is a great show to watch, to be reassured right now. But I love talking to him. So this is another one of my LA chats before the world went away. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, John Ross Bowie.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
John, how are you?
I'm good. It's good to be here.
Yes, thank you for trekking up here to the valley. This is the valley, I think, technically.
We are in the valley. We are
Yes.
absolutely in the San Fernando Valley.
Yeah, literally in it. We're in the bottom of the basin right now.
Yes,
outside.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Surrounded by fire. So you ended up picking, this is a very special edition here. We have a fall preview, 85. Mm-hmm. And when I think of 85, it's my favorite year of movies, I'm pretty sure.
You've got Back to the Future.
Real Genius.
Oh, wow.
Why am I blanking? After Hours.
Oh, my God. That's right.
Better Off Dead.
That's a
Breakfast
strong year.
Club. Manhunter.
Very strong year.
Day of the Dead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good year.
You know, when this last season of Stranger Things came on, I got really emotional because I, too, snuck into an auditorium to watch Day of the Dead upon its initial release. Because it was technically an X.
Yep.
And you were...
it was unrated.
It was unrated, yeah. And... I don't think we necessarily had to go through all those histrionics, but I think we probably bought a ticket for Real Genius and snuck into Day of the Dead, and had done the same thing the year before with Reanimator.
Nice.
So it was contraband, and it was dirty and forbidden.
Was that in New York City?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where I can imagine they just wouldn't care about kids seeing anything.
Well, you're probably right. I had friends who were going into the grindhouses in Times Square, and I was like, oh, I'm such a badass. I'm going to go see Day of the Dead on 2nd Avenue and 72nd Street.
Right.
But it was kind of fun to pretend that we were somewhere we weren't supposed to be.
And we really got to pay attention to this movie because we might be kicked out at any moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although I remember it was one of the first movies where I actually averted my eyes at the gore.
Oh,
Day
yeah.
of the Dead is gnarly.
Was it the guts spilling out scene?
It's the part where they tear the guy in half, and his last words are "choke on it." Exactly.
There's a rubber chicken in there. So
is there?
As a joke, in the guts they painted a rubber chicken red and put it in with the guts, and so you can see it when you notice it.
Wow!
But that's my favorite Romero zombie movie for sure.
Really?
Dead, yeah.
Oh, I'm still gonna go Dawn, but Day's very good. It has amazing ideas, and Bub is fascinating.
Yeah. Have you ever worked with him, Howard Sherman?
No, but I saw him in a play one time, and his bio was. Howard Sherman has been working in film and television and theater for 40 years. Google him.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it was pretty badass. Because he was pretty badass.
He was Lex Luthor on the terrible Superboy series as well that they shot at Universal Studios Florida.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeepers. Yeah. I was not familiar with that, but I did Google him at the time, but I don't remember that. I saw him in a revival of Gore Vidal's The Best Man on Broadway about 10 years ago, and he was excellent.
He's probably the guy from Day of the Dead that worked the most after and before I think of anyone else. Mm-hmm. Although I love the guy who plays Dr. Logan, who was in almost nothing.
Yeah. But they call him Frankenstein.
Yeah, Frankenstein. Yeah. I think he was like a New York stage actor for the most part. He used
to. I mean, he would just cast out of the Northeast. That was just his thing, and. They finally gave Night of the Living Dead that pristine Criterion edition,
yes.
And the behind the scenes stuff in it is great. It's so interesting.
In 2005. I had to go to Pittsburgh for work, but I had them put me up near the Monroeville Mall, so I could go.
Yeah,
and it was the closest thing I've ever had to a religious experience.
Right. That must be incredible.
Oh, it's a little different. But in 05, like most of this stuff was still there. Like the ice rink's now the food court, but like the JCPenney and the escalator and the elevator, like everything.
My God.
The little hallway where they build the foot wall. And so I've seen that movie. That's probably the movie I've seen the most times in my life, I think. It was the very first movie we rented. And when the video store was going out of business, I bought all their shelving, but I bought the tape. So I have the tape of the first.
It was the first movie I bought.
Yeah,
it was absolutely the first movie. I was like, I have a VCR now. I want to own this film.
Yeah. It weirdly is a movie you can watch over and over and over again.
Well, it breaks a bunch of rules, which I generally don't think that horror movies should be 2 hours and change.
Yeah.
But it's so sprawling and epic in its ideas, and I forget how much it slows down in the last third, but that's part of the horror is just this crippling boredom that is infusing all of them. It's a very interesting piece of work.
Because the whole, we have our own wonderland of a mall, and it's it's really not that great.
No.
Nothing to do. We're sitting up in an attic with food stocks doing nothing.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, everything he does is about something larger than zombies, but it is the most damning critique of consumerism that you're ever going to see. And as much as I enjoy the remake, it lacks that sting because it clocks in at 90 minutes and you don't get the soul deadening of living in a mall.
It's an action movie.
It's an action movie.
And the thing that and sorry to go on a horror tangent, but I could talk horror all day. And my show's all about tangent, and it's also my show. I can do what I want.
Sure.
But the thing about the Romero movies that even as a little kid I picked up on was it doesn't necessarily matter that they're zombies. It could be anything.
Yeah.
The whole point is that people are screwing up. We fucked up ourselves.
Right.
So when you make them fast moving and a true threat, it totally misses that, because in the remake of Night of the Living Dead that Savini did, when they make Barbara Strong, she's like, they're so slow, we can just walk past them, and people are like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And she does, and she survives, and it's if we just didn't panic or weren't selfish, we'd be fine.
Right.
And there is that angle of they're us, so people don't want to have their loved ones burned or treat them like in Dawn in that basement. But it's just like we could have handled this problem easily at the beginning, and now it's gone out of control. Whereas if they're like superhuman fast monsters, that's a whole
That's a
different
real
thing.
problem. That's a real threat. Yeah.
Right. And so that part being missed is it just bugs me.
Yeah, no, it takes away the satire potential that runs through Diary and Land and all of them that I find so interesting.
Yeah, or even I think Martin's my favorite movie he did.
Really?
And I don't know why.
I haven't seen Martin since I was in high school. I should see it again.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's something about it where it's just, to me, it feels like everything that he did, or all the stuff Romero was going for, like he just really nails it with that movie.
Interesting.
And it's just sad and weird and about like that, like old world, new world America. Like it's just really, really good.
I gotta watch that again.
It's worth rewatching.
Yeah.
Although The Crazies is fun too, but that's totally different.
The Crazies is so technically messed up though, with all the bad eye lines and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to watch because it's it's killing him.
Yep.
Because he is a very technically proficient filmmaker, and to have there be like all these bad technical notes throughout is
Amateur
frustrating.
hour going on.
Yeah.
Before we get into the guide, what's your like favorite horror films? I won't ask your favorite because it's hard to tell like what my favorite
Well,
is.
Dawn of the Dead is absolutely one of them. First Texas Chainsaw Massacre is incredible. It's a landmark of independent cinema, let alone horror movies. It's just an incredibly well done piece of work. It's hard to top the kitsch factor of the original Nightmare on Elm Street. There's just a lot of really good ideas in that movie.
Yeah.
As kind of dated as it is now, there's that scene where she runs up the stairs and it's basically marshmallow fluff is brilliant. That blew my little mind the first time I saw it. I thought it was just an astonishing piece of work.
And weirdly, like one of the most relatable things in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
We all kind of had that.
Oh, everyone's had that dream. Yeah. And what those films did very well was play with that idea, that universality of nightmares, and when Craven's good, he is so good.
Yeah.
It was, that's a favorite of mine. I like, you mentioned earlier before we were on mic, you mentioned the Hammer movies, and I grew up on those.
Yeah.
Which are just, they're funny because they're trashy, but they look classy because of all the accents and the outfits, you know, and this Victorian England. I'm like, it's tits and blood is what it is. Let's not kid ourselves. But, the Satanic Rites of Dracula or Dracula 80, 1972.
So you're talking the swinging
delight.
70s Dracula.
Yeah, that is a delight.
Yeah.
That one is really great. I worked with the head mod in that, guy named Christopher Neame. We did a series of commercials years ago, and I was just geeking out to him about Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing and everything.
I met Christopher Lee.
Speaking of Hammer, Seven Golden Vampires.
Yep.
I like that a lot.
Final movie they ever made, I think.
Before their big break, they came back with that.
Oh, that's right.
Women in Black.
Women in Black. Yeah, they did The Devil Rides Out and Golden Vampires, I think, were the last two movies.
Yeah.
Because Golden Vampires is Shaw Brothers co-production.
Yeah. So Shaw Brothers is on the rise and they're on the out, but Hong Kong is a British colony still.
Yep.
So it's the business machinations behind that movie are as interesting as anything that's on the screen. And then coupled with the fact that Chinese vampires hop, you've just got a phenomenal cinematic experience.
I wrote a script a few years ago because I love Chinese hopping vampires.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why we haven't exploited them in the West. Like they should be a staple.
Well, they
monster.
get a weirard laugh is one reason. They get a very weird laugh.
And someone told me because they're like, oh, it's kind of racist. And I'm like, is it? But I guess if people are seeing it that way, that would make sense why we wouldn't try to do them. But I wrote this script about the opioid problem in Boston in a way, but it was these guys who are like clean and off opioids and they're just like towny idiots. And so they decide, what are we going to do to help? So they look up on Wikipedia opioids and see that it's like Chinese, like opium history. Okay. So they're like, Chinatown is going to be where all the opium is. So they go on like a stakeout and there's a guy who's keeping vampires in like one of the basements of one of the buildings because like you have to be like a Taoist monk to make sure that and they don't know what that is and they think it's opium. They basically end up releasing them all. And so these dumb townies have to team up with like this Taoist monk to like get the
So it's a bunch of massholes trying to contain
hopping vampires.
That's my favorite movie that hasn't been made yet.
And everyone was like, no, this would never. And I'm like, oh, they're like, you're making fun of. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like it's opium and it makes sense. And yeah, they weren't having it.
That's fantastic.
But yeah, I love those monsters that haven't quite made it to the West yet.
Yeah, it's a very very interesting field, and I don't know if it's a question of appropriation or what it is, but I'd love to see the Chinese hopping vampire go a little wider.
Yeah, Mr. Vampire is one of my favorite movies.
I've never seen it. It's supposed to be amazing.
It's great, and I actually love like a lot of like. Have you ever seen like Brad with the White Hair or like Chinese Ghost Story? Like it's just so good.
They're great. Yeah.
And then Ronnie Yu came over and made Bride of Chucky.
Was that a Ronnie Yu?
It's Ronnie Yu.
Oh, it's funny because all the publicity went to John Woo's American films, and then people didn't notice that like Ringo Lam was coming over, and Ronnie Yu and Kirk Wong, and all these guys were coming over in like the late '90s, like, oh, we can do this too, and they got like tertiary scripts. They were making like Dennis Rodman action movies and stuff, but some of them are really charming and interesting.
Oh yeah, and Ronnie Yu also did Freddy vs. Jason.
That's
which
right.
Looks beautiful. I mean, it's not a great movie, but it has that style that he did.
Well, the worst Hong Kong movie is going to look better than anything you're going to see in that. I mean, I was on a massive flight to Europe a few years ago and watched this like programmer called From Vegas to Macau, I think it was a Chow Yun Fat gambling action movie, and it was, garbage, and it made no sense, and it had weird in jokes about
tone shifts and all.
And weird tonal shifts, and but there were a couple action sequences that were breathtaking.
Oh yeah. I had Cynthia Rothrock on.
Oh wow.
She was talking about when she didn't speak Chinese. She got signed to Golden Harvest. She's like 19. She grew up in New Jersey. They fly her over, and her first movies with Jackie Chan and Chow Yun Fat and Michelle Yeoh. And she's like, "Do I need to know lines?" And they're like, "No." And they're like, "Well, what am I doing?" They're like, "You just go in and talk to her." She's like, "What do I say?" And they're like, "Doesn't matter." Because they're just dubbing.
I've heard, yeah.
So she doesn't even know the plot or anything. And they're like,
just know when it's time to kick ass.
Yeah. And then they just do the scenes. And the first night she was there, she met Jackie Chan. And they're like, Jackie would like to sing to you.
Oh,
so they go to this karaoke bar. And he sings Happy Birthday and really bad. And she starts laughing. And they're like, why are you laughing? And she's like, isn't it a joke? And they're like, no. And he got really mad. It was like a whole thing. And it ended up making up there. But I was like, that is craziness. And yeah, just hearing the perspective of someone who was like, yeah, I don't know. And all the fight scenes, she's like, yeah, they're just like, just fight. They're just like, no, just hit her. Yeah, like.
My God.
Insane.
It's amazing. Because I guess they're just focusing on like the perfect camera angle. But,
yeah, so that makes sense of why it looked good and wasn't the thing. So the fall preview 85 was a huge year.
Huge year. So I had no idea how much came out. I used to love. I bought TV Guide every week when I was a kid. I bought it and I found it really interesting. And years later, when I was interviewed in it, it was a complete, wonderful, full circle moment for me.
Yeah.
So this is a fun podcast for me, and I'm positive I had that issue that we're thumbing through right now.
Oh yeah, you had to get the fall preview.
Yeah, it was a big. It looks like a phone book compared to the others. And fall '85 is bonkers. You've got Moonlighting starts that year. Golden Girl starts that year. It's Spencer for Hire starts that year. Yep. We'll talk about that.
Mr. Belvedere.
But
then all these shows, like one of the things I was saying before we started recording was like the roads not traveled shows. So obviously they don't know which of these shows are going to be on for 10 years. So they kind of handle everything on the same keel.
Everything has an egalitarian approach to it, and we're going to give Hometown as much credence as Moonlighting.
MacGyver, 227, Amazing Stories.
Wow.
Alfred Hitchcock Presents came back. So this was when the anthology horror, they did the new Twilight Zone again that year.
That's right.
Growing Pains started that year, but they really brought back...
I remember that Alfred Hitchcock Presents reboot. Actually, I remember watching that. It's not on this particular week, but I do remember watching it.
It was good.
It was fun, yeah.
And the new Twilight Zone was kind of a mess, but like some of my favorite Twilight Zones ever from it.
There's one where Bruce Willis meets his doppelganger.
Shatterday. It was the pilot.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's why I remember it. And there's one where I want to say Robert Klein forgets English.
Yep. It's called Wordplay.
That's right.
That's my favorite one ever. And I always recommend it to people who are trying to write comedy because it's the perfect shift of comedy to horror.
Yeah.
Without anything actually changing.
Yeah.
Because it's funny at first because they're like, what's for dinosaur? And he's like, what do you mean? Dinner. And you're like, ha ha ha. And then when every word is wrong and he can't understand anything, and it's horrifying.
It's horrifying. Then I remember it ends with him sitting in his little girl's room and she's teaching him how to read. Yep. And it chilled me to the bone. And Robert Klein's excellent in it.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that one very vividly.
It's so good. And Joe Dante directed a couple that are really good.
Oh, no kidding.
The Shadow Men he did, which is about monsters that live under your bed. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah. This kid learns that your Shadow Man can't hurt you.
Okay.
It's not, I forget how he learns it. And so he confronts the Shadow Man at the end and it starts to hurt him. He's like, you can't hurt me. He's like, oh, I'm not your Shadow Man. I'm from someone else's bed. it's
amazing.
Yeah, it's great. So huge year. Oh, and Pee-wee's Big Adventures 85 too.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so many shows that I just forgot about. And I don't think there's one with Daniel Stern here. There's like a cop show. Crazy Like a Fox.
Yeah, sure. John Rubinstein, Jack Warden.
Yep.
Sure.
Used Cars is one of my favorites. Jack Warden, so good in that. Hometown's one with Daniel Stern. Just shows that I'm like, I don't even know if I could rewatch this now. Like, where even is it?
Well, I'm 14 in 1985, in fall of 1985. I'm 14. I'm heading into high school. I don't have a ton of friends my freshman year of high school, so I'm still watching a ton of TV. I get into Moonlighting that year. And I'm on a cusp of like kids TV and grown-up TV. And I think that's reflected in my viewing habits this week.
Hollywood Beat. So what'd you do on the first night there, Saturday?
So first night, I watched the Give Me a Break premiere because they're dealing with Dolph Sweet's death.
Yes, which was huge.
Yeah, and I think this is probably what I did that night. Is I watched Give Me a Break that night and was just fascinated to see how a TV show would deal with this because prior to that, it had been. I mean, by this, Coach is still alive on Cheers. Yep. So it's Mr. Hooper on Sesame Street is the only series regular I know who's died.
Jack Sue on Barney Miller is the only one I can think
but
of.
You know what? I wasn't
too young.
I might have been too young. I watched Barney Miller occasionally. But yeah, you're right. Jack Sue would have passed by then.
That's the only one I can think of. And they addressed it on the show.
They did address it on the show, and then they did a clip show where they all sat around drinking his terrible coffee.
Yeah,
like that
and
was
talking to the camera and talking about him. But yeah, Dolph Sweet was... such an integral part of that show too. Like not that Coach wasn't or Mr. Hooper wasn't necessarily.
He was the dad.
He's the dad.
Yeah.
He's the main antagonist for Nell. And I didn't know he was a Broadway song and dance guy.
I didn't know that either.
Which is crazy because he seems like a non-actor in a good way.
Yeah, he seems like one of those guys like he's, a retired cop who's like, oh, I'll get my SAG card.
Right.
Who cares?
Oh, come on now.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was, he died over the summer and the way that they dealt with it by putting it in show, because I guess you couldn't ignore it. You couldn't recast them.
No, not something like that. This wasn't,
The Kaninsky family is still mourning the chief's death as the 5th season begins, and an uproar ensues when Jonathan, played by Jonathan Silverman,
oh my God,
suggests that he and Julie move into her dad's bedroom.
Wow. Yeah. Dramatic.
So we got, Joey Lawrence is already on it at this point. They've already introduced Grandpa, so it's not even like
I wonder if they this was before, about once a week I think about the episode where one of the kids cons, you're way ahead of me on this, aren't you? Where one of the kids makes Joey Lawrence dress up in blackface. Yeah.
Two-parter. Kerry Michelson does it to get back at Nell.
That's right. I think about that about once a week.
Yeah.
And it haunts me to this day. And I worked with Joey Lawrence on Melissa and Joey and didn't ask him about it, but it was on the tip of my tongue for the entire week we were working together.
Well, I especially thought about it in the last couple of years when somehow every politician has worn blackface.
Yeah.
I've never worn blackface.
I've never worn blackface.
I've never known anyone who's worn blackface.
No.
And they're all like, oh, it's just a thing you do. And I'm like, really?
I think it is. Yeah.
And I'm like, didn't you see the Give Me a Break? Like, that's all I needed. They pretty much got it really, really clear.
Nell
Don't
Carter
ever do
likens
that.
it to using the N-word, and she says the word because you used to hear the word so much on TV, and it was used for its power. It wasn't casually thrown away, but you would hear that word, it would just be like, whoa, Give Me a Break. And this is what I mean by being on the cusp of like shows for younger people and shows for older people. I was probably still watching Give Me a Break here and there. I found Nell Carter interesting. I thought the girls were cute.
Yep.
And so that was appointment TV for me.
Yeah. And a show that I revisit, and it kind of still does hold up.
No, really?
There's definitely, Nell's funny in it.
She is really funny.
But also as an adult, I'm watching.
Observant Jew.
Yes.
Observant Jew.
Was
yeah.
she?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, she's a lunatic. Like in the show, like the stuff she does, I'm like, oh, that's not a normal. You've caused all the problems here.
Right.
You're out of your mind.
Yeah.
But somehow still works. And again, they did a lot of weird backdoor ways to make, and I don't know if this was conscious, but to like make shows about like interracial marriages or make shows about like a gay couple. So you have like My Two Dads or Kate and Allie or like it was sort of a weird loophole that they would kind of make these shows about relationships that might not have, definitely weren't going to be on TV.
Right. There's sort of a code behind Kate and Allie that is interesting. Yeah.
So there's that, and what'd you do at 8:30?
8:30, I switched over to the broadcast rerun of the MTV Movie Awards.
Yep.
Because we didn't have cable yet.
Which I forgot they did.
I'd forgotten they did that
would air
too.
it.
I'd forgotten they did that too. But I remember Eddie Murphy hosting and bursting through a wall when in the beginning when the guitar part of Money for Nothing came on, and I'd gone over to my friend Portia's house the year before to watch the first MTV Movie Awards, which were Music Awards rather, which were hosted by Dan Aykroyd and Bette Midler, and by 85, they'd kind of course corrected and realized like those are pretty old hosts.
Yeah.
And they had what was probably like a 24-year-old Eddie Murphy at that point.
If
crazy young. Yeah.
Well, he was 19 and 80 on SNL. So yeah, he would have been like 24.
Yeah. And he was great. And I remember him introducing Rick Ocasek, may he rest. It was a fun evening, but that would have taken me through the rest of the night.
Oh yeah, that's 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I do want to mention this is the Boston edition, and there's a show that I've been looking for years, to the point where I called people at WCVB that I know and asked them if they have a tape somewhere of this. Okay. It's called Use Your Smarts About Drugs and Alcohol. Local teenagers discuss ways to handle peer pressure.
Oh, dude.
1985, Boston local teenagers discussing peer pressure would be everything I want to watch.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. Sully wants me to do angel dust.
Yeah. He told me to have like 9 beers, and I was like, I'll have 6.
That strength is what that is. I just said no.
Yeah. I drove, whatever. He gave me some whizzer. I was studying all night. Facts of Life is on. This is the George Clooney season.
Sure. This is the pastel season.
Yes, the Over Our Heads season, which is my absolute favorite. Mackenzie Aston's really funny on that show.
God, that's right.
As like a scheming adult in a child's body.
On the writing staff that time, Paul Haggis.
Oh, was he?
Oscar winner Paul Haggis on the writing staff.
That's amazing. Yeah. Paul Provenza was also on the writing staff.
Oh, no kidding.
He was their warm-up comic for years.
Really?
He was the Facts of Life warm-up comic for almost the entire run.
That's fascinating.
And then they put him in the show the last season.
Oh, no kidding.
He played Blair's boyfriend who ran a youth rec center.
Phenomenal.
Which was super weird. 227 premieres that night.
Yeah.
Which was based on a play set in D.C., which was weird.
Oh, I didn't think I realized that. That's interesting.
And it was just a great show. I love that show.
227 ran for years, too. And they tried to do that again a couple years ago with Superior Donuts, which was a Tracy Letts play. And they tried to do a multicam based on that. And I think they got like a season and a half out of it, which is not bad these days.
Do you think multicams just can't work? I mean, obviously Big Bang Theory is an exception, but having been in the industry and done sitcoms and Speechless, which is great, but it's single cam, do you think it can work? Like, people just won't have it.
Oh, I think it's a delicate alchemy. I think it's harder than it looks.
Oh, absolutely.
It's definitely harder than it looks, but I think it can still succeed. Yeah, I think there's something to people enjoying the sound of an audience laughing and that sense of like fake community that you get from it. And it gets to a point where I bristle whenever people like make a pejorative crack about the quote unquote laugh track of Big Bang Theory. I did 25 episodes, all in front of a studio audience that laughed really hard. That was, I mean, there are shows with laugh tracks. I've done those too, and I'm happy to discuss them. But when people use the term laugh track as an all-encompassing term, God, that burns my ass. It's so weird. I think it can still work, but I think it is, it's a very hard thing to write. I think it's a very hard thing to act in. I think the acting required in a multicam is an uneasy mix of theatrical and television, because you are playing to the audience that's in the room, but you're also framed from the waist up. So you can't go too big, but nor can you go too small. There's a delicate balance, and which is why, the Academy recognizes people like Jim Parsons, who are, I mean, he really is amazing. Yeah. Does he deserve all 4 Emmys? I don't know, but he deserves a couple of them.
But like Laurie Metcalf, John Larroquette, like those people who at the point were like, can you please stop nominating me? I have enough now.
Yeah.
And they get it like that.
Yeah. And Michael J. Fox was a phenomenal. Ted Danson was perfect at it. Shelley Long was really good at it. Kelsey Grammer's a magician.
Yeah.
These are guys who are technicians who are able to surf a laugh to the absolute last possible minute where you can then build on it with your next line. It's surgical. It's fascinating to watch. I got to watch Newhart. I wasn't on any of his episodes, but I got to come to a taping. Galecki reached out to me. Of Big Bang when Newhart was on it. Yeah. And Galecki, God bless him, knows me. And he was like, I want to get you a drive on for when Newhart comes on. I was like, yes, you do.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. And I went and I watched him just, weaponize the pause in a way that was remarkable to behold.
He's one of my biggest influences too in stand-up, which is no one would ever get. Like, I might stuff nothing like Newhart, but just nobody did things the way that he did them, and there's a very specific cadence and timing.
When you think of him coming out in the mid-'60s with the button-down mind, when Jerry Lewis is at the peak of his solo powers, and what an alarming contrast that had to have been.
Broad as broad can be comedy at that time.
With him doing one half of a phone call, straight manning someone who isn't even there.
Yep.
It's remarkable.
And then it's bizarre that they were like, get this guy to guest host the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
Weird.
But there's an accessibility to him that is... and I'm not necessarily knocking Jerry Lewis, although I've never really been a fan. But I mean, there's just some kind of otherworldly and alien about what he's doing that has its merits. But Bob Newhart. Bob Newhart is the guy in your office, the funniest guy. If your office has anybody that funny, that's amazing. Good for you. But he's got that dryness that I think is aspirational in a way that what Jerry Lewis does is just his own thing.
Yeah. It's almost like an elite athlete doing a thing versus like someone who's like a doctor.
Yeah.
Like they're both impressive skill sets.
Right.
But like one is so much less showy in a lot of ways. A Newhart, which I think is on Monday night, you may or may not have picked, and we may get to in a minute, is one of my... And I like the Bob Newhart show, but Newhart is maybe my favorite sitcom of all time, and I really watch it. It's
Appointment TV, and it is on this week. Yeah,
so funny. Yeah. So we'll talk about where we get there.
Okay.
So you're watching that all night, 227, and then at 9:30. Yeah, that's the day.
No, I do MTV Movie Awards. I just do that. That washes me out, and I probably fall asleep watching that.
Did you ever get cable?
We did, but late. I want to say 87. We got cable.
Okay.
Yeah, we were the last family to get cable. And I couldn't tell. It's hard to tell with my mom if she was, if we were genuinely poor, or she was just hella stingy. It was never made particularly clear to me, but 87 was when we got cable finally. And I just went nuts and taped all the HBO stand-up specials. And
you've been up for 4 days.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Young comedians special.
Young comedian specials, Emo Phillips, Bob Goldthwait, all those guys.
Meet Bob, was that, you guys did that first special?
No, Share the Warmth was the first one.
Yeah.
Share the Warmth? Yeah, I think so. I've met him too. Lovely guy.
Yeah, Bob's great.
So Sunday's an interesting night because I used to, against my better judgment, even knowing they were super corny, I used to watch those fall preview specials that networks would do. and then years later got to host one. But the ABC All-Star Spectacular I would have watched because I might have been fascinated by Bruce Willis singing.
With Ben Vereen.
Yeah.
And Robert Urich.
They used to do a lot of the... They used to do the ABC Spectacular. I don't know if they did it this year, but they used to do it on the Love Boat.
Yes, the year before it was on the Love. It was the last one because Love Boat ended in 84, 85.
There we have it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they were doing on... but they were... Yeah, it would have been a... Love Boat. That had a laugh track.
Love Boat. The Love Boat crew hosts an hour of entertainment featuring stars from ABC's new and returning primetime series.
There we go.
Highlights include Bruce Willis of Moonlighting sings his own version of the Love Boat theme. Ben Vereen dances to the Join Is Jumpin'. Joan Collins vamps the captain. Marie Osmond, Emmanuel Lewis, and the Love Boat Mermaids perform a song and dance number. And guests include Gary Coleman, Brian Keith, Sybil Shepherd, Eli Wallach, Emma Sams, Tony Danza, and Robert Urich.
Emma Sams was hot.
Oh yeah, still is.
Yeah,
still looks
Emma
great.
Sams is super hot.
But it was weird to see. It was like a crossover comic book movie.
Oh yeah, no, it was
Shared Universe is Webster.
Oh, it was crazy. Yeah, and have Gary Coleman and Emmanuel Lewis on the same show, which baffles me a little bit. Wasn't Different Strokes NBC?
It was,
and then it moved.
Got canceled and moved networks for the final season. Yeah,
Taxi did that too. Yeah. I remember Taxi flipped. Actually, Taxi I think went ABC to NBC.
Yep, the Danny Cooksey season was the year that was on NBC with Dixie Carter.
Danny Cooksey lived in my neighborhood growing up.
Oh, really?
He was in Hell's Kitchen. Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
The weird thing about Manhattan too is that even with cable, MTV didn't actually come there until '86.
Oh, okay.
So
really? Then how did I watch it? That's weird. But I remember watching it at Portia's house. Maybe he had different types.
Maybe it was earlier. Maybe it was 84 or something.
Yeah,
because it started in 81. But some of the
Burrows didn't have cable for a while. Like my dad moved out to Queens and didn't have cable, and then his second wife moved in with him in Woodside, and that was her big joke was, "God, the sacrifices we make for love." I was on the east side of Manhattan. I had a great cable package.
I got nothing. I don't get Super Channel or anything. But because the VJs, they filmed in Manhattan, and no one recognized them because no one was watching MTV. And it was when they'd go to like some podunk place in the middle of America where they would be these huge stars, and they're like, "Oh, people are watching it."
You would see Mark Goodman around because it was the Viacom building on 44th, and you would see Mark Goodman in the neighborhood sometimes, and maybe Martha Quinn too, but Mark Goodman was really tall, so he kind of stuck out.
He had that hair too, so you're like, oh, that's definitely Mark Goodman.
Yeah. So I would have watched the ABC All-Star Spectacular on the Love Boat, and then years later I hosted one with Anthony Anderson.
That's amazing.
Which felt like another very satisfying full circle moment.
You're like, I know it's not on TV anymore, but can we do it on the Love Boat?
I phoned ahead. They were resistant to the idea.
They're like, we don't have it anymore.
You're lost, guys.
Yeah. And then 9 o'clock, what'd you do?
I would have. I don't know that I would have done this at the time, but now I want to go back and watch the 2-hour movie Lady Blue. I would have just stayed on ABC, I believe, and watched. I was always interested in shows like that were clearly supposed to be pilots. And just for whatever reason, they used to burn off pilots in the summer or in the early fall. It'd just be like, here, we don't got anything else, so here's something vaguely new.
We spent the money.
Yeah. And now they're just write-offs, and these things, vanish completely.
Yeah.
But there was something about giving everybody their day in court that I found interesting. I don't even think I was able to put it into words, but I was like, okay, this was supposed to be a series, and I would always be struck when they ended on sort of an open-ended moment.
And they would say it a lot of times, and Lady Blue went to series later, but they would sometimes say, like, show not scheduled on
not on the announced fall schedule. Yeah, I remember that.
They would sometimes do it like they do CBS Summer Comedy Playhouse, and it would just be a different pilot every week.
Right.
And you're like, oh, these are clearly just pilots that you haven't done.
I remember seeing a multicam with Dick Shawn as Count Dracula one time, and he lived in a walk-up tenement in Brooklyn.
Oh, 1313 Lane. It's
no, that's the Munsters address.
Yeah, but they called it 1313. It was an apartment building, and Eileen Graff was in it as a witch.
That sounds
and
right.
And Will Wheaton is the kid. And
no way.
Yeah,
Wheaton's in it?
Wheaton's in it.
I gotta talk to Wheaton about this. That's fucking bonkers.
He knows there are all monsters in the building, but his family doesn't know. So, like, the superintendent's like a troll.
Oh my God.
If it's the show that I'm thinking of, unless there were more than one.
There could have been. See, what I have here is Mr. and Mrs. Dracula, failed TV pilot, 1980. Mr. and Mrs. Dracula.
Then I'm thinking
Dick
of a show
Shawn,
from 83.
Carol Lawrence. I'll track down that. First off, let me save this in my
must revisit file.
Yeah. This is a few years before Dick Shawn died on stage in doing his one-man show somewhere in the
People
Midwest.
thought it was a joke.
Yeah, people thought it was a bit. Because I would have watched Lady Blue.
And that's an hour.
Yeah, and I Sunday night, school night, I'd have gone to bed.
There's also a really creepy ad in here for these things called comfy kid dolls, when they spell comfy with a K. And it just says "cuddle me," and then these dolls are just like real creepy.
Yeah. That would have been those would have been Cabbage Patch Kid knockoffs.
Oh, for sure.
At the time, because they were huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that era.
And wow, they also debuted a bunch of, just flipping through to get to Monday, a bunch of reboot game shows in '85 during the day. So Let's Make a Deal came back.
Oh, wow.
All new Let's Make a Deal.
Yeah.
Pyramid bumped up to $25,000 after $10,000.
Inflation, man.
Yeah. And we had a new show called Headline Chasers.
Headline Chasers.
Which I don't know what that was.
That must have syndicated. Maybe it didn't come down to New York.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know what that show was. And Divorce Court. Which, do you remember what that was?
I do. It was Divorce Court the one that it was staged. It was actors. Yes.
Divorce Court, the judge and Superior Court were transcripts from real court cases, and they had actors
played by
stage
actors.
them.
Yeah.
And that's why the People's Court stood out, because it was real litigants.
Yeah.
But they were
with much lower stakes.
Exactly. Yeah. But they were so weird because it was the worst acting. In the best way.
Yeah. It was very, very strange. You ever remember in the 90s, VH1 used to do a Hollywood Babylon show?
Yes.
Where they would do reenactments, and they had a cadre of players that were sort of their repertory company, and like they'd have the same guy would play Laurence Olivier one week and then Roman Polanski the other.
Right.
You know, biting the Quaalude in half to give it to the 13-year-old girl. And I remember very vividly Hollywood Babylon on VH1 in the 90s, and just being baffled by how poor the acting was.
I think they did in '85, the Twilight Zone movie. I think they did the John Landis, Steven Spielberg court case on that VH1 show.
Really?
Because I remember someone with a really bad beard.
Amazing.
John Landis on stage. Yeah.
That's bonkers.
It was terrible.
My wife and I are 2 years apart. I'm 2 years older than her, and that usually doesn't matter, but there's little tiny things along the way that were not on her cultural radar, and the Twilight Zone death was one of them. And I found myself explaining to her, I'm like, no, you don't.
It's horrific.
It's horrific, and it's like, it's Jennifer Jason Leigh's dad, and how do you not, but you sound crazy when you tell that story.
Steven Spielberg was in court. He had to testify.
Yeah. It's bonkers, and you know, there's arguments on all sides, and it's
and then the movie came out.
Yeah.
With the segment. That's the weird. They're like, well, we'll see what we can salvage.
Yeah.
It's like, really?
Yeah.
It's an anthology movie.
And it was the only new one, although it's loosely based on that Dean Stockwell episode.
Right.
But it's I guess they're like, this is the one. The rest are remakes of an episode. This is the one new one. Yeah, very strange.
My favorite joke from Third Rock from the Sun is when Shatner guests on the show.
Oh, I don't know this one.
And
oh wait, that's amazing. I see where this is going.
And he shows up late.
Yeah.
And he goes, we had a problem with the plane. And then Lithgow goes, that happened to me once. And they never explain more than that. And I was like, this is the best joke I've ever seen.
That's amazing.
So
you ever
good.
see Alan Alda on 30 Rock?
No.
There's an episode of 30 Rock where Alan Alda is playing Baldwin's father. And he wanders onto the set, and there's a weird sketch going on where there's some sort of weird sketch where there's an infant and a chicken.
It was a baby.
And he goes crying about a baby and a chicken. I thought this was a comedy show. And it just throws out there, and it's glorious.
That I forgot about that ending. Like, I think I blocked it out.
Yeah, sure.
And I rewatched it recently, and it upset me so much.
That kid's head dropping is part of my consciousness. I watched it live. I would have watched it the night it aired. I was 12.
It's got to be one of the most disturbing things on TV
It's so
ever,
unsettling.
let alone in a comedy.
It's so unsettling.
It's horrible.
Yeah. Remember that one? I remember the show where they all have nightmares. There's an episode where they all have nightmares, and Winchester is dancing with dynamite in his hands.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Monday night.
Monday night is an easy one. Monday night's a super easy one. The Bosom Buddies rerun at 8.
Yep.
Bosom Buddies was
Peter Scolari.
I'm an early. There's a part of me that's Tom Hanks is the biggest movie star in the world. Yeah. He's our Jimmy Stewart, and there's a part of me that's like, oh no, I'm an early adopter. I'm a hipster where it comes to Tom Hanks.
I saw him and he knows you're alone.
Yeah.
Actually, Julia Duffy told me a really funny story about when they hired Peter Scolari on Newhart. You ever heard this story?
No.
They're doing the first table read, and Newhart comes in a little late, and they do the whole table read, and he turns to the producer loud so that Scolari can hear and goes, I wanted the other guy from Bosom Buddies.
That's brutal.
And then Scolari was upset. And he was just like, I'm just kidding with you. It was like a total hazing thing.
Hilarious.
But Scolari was like, oh no.
Scolari's great. And he's got an Emmy now, and I couldn't be happier for him.
Perfect.
So Bosom Buddies I loved. I've worked with Holland Taylor, and I was completely starstruck about that. I would have watched the SCTV rerun after that.
My favorite sketch show ever, probably.
Really?
Just the world building.
The world building is insane, and it's the lack of laughter is innovative and crazy, and
sometimes the show's scary.
Yeah, the specificity is wild on that show. It is really something to behold, and I mean, it's Murderers Row, that cast. You just cannot. That's Murderers Row. It's more consistent than the first SNL cast. Yep. It's perfect. Everyone on that show is fantastic. To
the point where the year before Lorne Michaels came back, they initially did SCTV Network 90 on Friday nights with the intent to have it replace SNL.
Right.
Because Lorne Michaels was gone. And Dick Ebersol, before they got Lorne Michaels back in 85, they canceled SCTV and they said, you guys can all be the cast of SNL if you want to.
Yeah.
Just take it. And they were like, I don't think so.
But Martin Short did it.
Martin Short did it. Catherine O'Hara did it, but never made it to an episode because she quit before because it was so terrible.
Oh, wow.
Mike O'Donoghue was brutal to her.
Oh, it was all women. He was a horrible misogynist.
Yeah. I think they're the only two from Oh, no, Robin Duke.
Robin Duke.
Tony Risotto. Tony Risotto's
at Toronto. Yeah, that's right.
And, they were both on SNL.
Yeah.
But the specificity, Eugene Levy, when they would do the Andy Griffith sketches, he specifically plays the Floyd the Barber post-stroke. And he made a conscious decision to play him post-stroke.
That is fascinating.
And it's so mean.
It's so
funny because they do that Godfather one and he's like, I have Opie. This break his heart.
Right. I got to go back and watch those. They're fascinating. I remember the Sammy Maudlin show being wildly over my head, but in hindsight, pretty brilliant.
Sammy Maudlin show on the last season of SCTV that she did on Cinemax.
And
it was just like the core cast. Like Rick Moranis had left, Catherine O'Hara left, so it was just like Levy, Flaherty, and Andrew Martin. And Martin Short. They do a Sammy Maudlin parody of Thick of the Night. Which, if you remember, Thick of the Night was advertised as like, look out, Johnny, the new cruise. It was this like cutting edge. So they reinvent Sammy Maudlin as that.
Oh my God.
And he has, because Alan Thicke had a cast of comics that were like,
they did sketches.
Yeah. And he had like 4 Ed McMahons. Like that was his thing.
Yeah.
So on Sammy Maudlin, they have a crew they call his Zanies. And it's Martin Short being Howie Mandel.
Oh, God.
And all he does is go, and they're like, he's the master of improvisation. So he goes, we got all these objects. He's never seen them before. He's going to improvise a sketch. And so he goes over and he's just looking at him. He's going, and he's like, if you don't have anything, it's okay. If you don't have anything, don't. And it's so funny. It's just
brutal.
It's so
that was the thing is like they would get to like they would cut right down to the fat meat of celebrity discomfort in a way that no one else could touch.
Yep.
And by virtue of their framing device of like, we're a TV network, it was easy for them to go there. But just the level of like guests coming on, like Sammy Maudlin doesn't want you to know how much work he does for charity. Just like the incredible amount of self-congratulatory bullshit that goes on in this business, and it was remarkable.
And they would do impressions no one ever did. Like Rick Moranis did George Carlin.
That's
no
right.
one did George Carlin. No one made fun of George Carlin. And he has this amazing... first of all, they do a Woody Allen movie, but starring George Carlin, which is really funny.
Oh, yeah,
they're like, hey, stop doing those bits. I hate them. And he's like, all right, I'm going to do my bits. But he comes out, they did a fake midnight special, and he comes out and he goes, I've been thinking about underrated vegetables. And then he goes, beets. Beats me. And then he goes, thank you. And then just leaves, and it's so perfect.
Oh, God, Moranis. What a genius.
But clearly from someone who enjoys the person they're parroting. Like, it's so well observed.
It's well observed and again, specific. And there's a lot of love behind all of it. I need to go back and watch some more of those.
Well worth revisiting. You passed up, so I know that you're a diehard ABC guy here, because you passed up that night the Let's All Be There for the third annual NBC All-Star Hour.
No, I know. I would have. I had to make. It was a tough decision, but again, I don't. It's not like I can. I don't have VCR yet.
Yeah.
So there's no tape one, watch the other. That's not an option.
This has songs too.
Okay.
The network's fall lineup is previewed in a variety format featuring some 100 stars from big and returning shows. Highlights include One Big Happy Family, a production number with cast members from NBC's family sitcoms, New Attitude, sung by Nell Carter, The Heat Is On with a police story theme, Helltown Boogie, this is the best.
Helltown Boogie was the Robert Blake show.
A song and dance number led by Robert Blake. Which sounds like an SCTV sketch.
Yeah, it really does.
Robert Blake in Helltown, he was a priest, like a badass priest with a gun.
Yeah.
And it's a song and dance number done by him.
You can find the opening credits to Helltown on YouTube, and it's one of those great opening credits that's a minute long and lays out the premise of the show, and it's just flawlessly badass.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that show was nuts. And a murderer.
Yeah.
So you're watching
Never
that.
convicted. Has to
Never
be said.
convicted.
Never
That's
convicted.
true. Never convicted. 9 p.m. What'd you do?
9 p.m. It would have been. I loved Kate and Alley.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about Kate and Alley was that it shot in New York, and there were only 2 sitcoms. That and Cosby were the only 2 shows that actually shot in New York. And like your friend's dad, I feel like a friend's dad came really close to staying on Kate and Alley, but you'd like see people who'd been on that show around the neighborhood. And that was always really interesting. And then I've always loved Jane Curtin.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. I feel like she's underrated.
Absolutely.
And I feel like she, as like the one member of the original SNL cast who wasn't drowning in cocaine, she has had a longevity. She's just a really cool, smart lady. I've met her, and she's actually really awesome and down to earth.
Married with a kid from Cambridge, Mass.
Yeah,
Went to Northeastern.
Was she the committee? What was the Massachusetts improv group that she was on?
I can't think of it now. It's not the committee.
Committee San Francisco. Yes. You're right.
I'll think of it later, or someone will read
Premise?
it. I think it might be the premise.
Yeah. But yeah, so she's Northeastern improv royalty, and I also had a crush on both the daughters on that show.
Of course. Yeah.
And
the original Annie was one of them.
Nope, not the original. The original was Andrew McArdle. Allison was
Smith, right?
second or third. Yeah.
Okay.
And I say that because Annie was my first Broadway musical.
Okay.
I saw the OBC. So I started to get pedantic on you there.
That's what I need.
I figured if you're going to do it on any show.
Yeah. Did you ever see How to Beat the High Cost of Living?
Yeah, I saw it when it showed up on network on broadcast television a couple years after it came out.
It's worth revisiting because it's Susan St. James and Jane Curtin, and they are.
Who's the third one?
It's not long.
It's a heist movie. They rip off a mall.
Kate Jackson, maybe?
That sounds right.
Yeah. These housewives plan a heist and rob a mall.
Yeah.
And it's the first time they were paired together, and the two of them just have this like amazing chemistry where you're like, oh, they must have been friends forever.
Yeah.
And they weren't.
Yeah, no, they weren't at all.
It's perfect.
It's amazing. Dick Ebersol's wife, Susan St. James.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that show, and that show still holds up. Like I will watch that show now, and it's really funny because it's just dialogue.
Yeah,
it's timeless and it's funny and great.
They did something really later on in the series where one of they started to get kind of lazy, but also kind of meta. And there was one episode late in the series run where the daughter comes down, there's like a basement apartment, and then it went upstairs. And daughter comes downstairs and says, "Mom, I have a problem." And Susan St. James goes, "Is it something that can be solved in 22 minutes?" And I was like, "Whoa, hey, what just happened?
You can do that?
Wait, hang on."
Yeah, that stuff blew my mind as a kid.
Yeah.
Growing Pains did that every so often.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Growing Pains was a deadly earnest show. I'm surprised to hear that.
It was season 2 and 3. They would do these weird fourth wall breaking things, and Just the 10 of Us, the spinoff, would always reference Mr. Belvedere, which was on before it. So there was an episode where the girls come home from a date and they're like, "What's going on?" He's like, "I just missed your favorite show." And they're like, "What show?" He's like, "How that funny one that's on after Mr. Belvedere." Like, they do that all the time. It was super weird. There was tons of that stuff where, again, it's like that winking thing with that happened to me on a plane once, where you feel like it's just for you.
Yeah.
And it makes you just go, "Yes, I'm rewarded for my time."
That's amazing.
And then 9:30, I assume you did Newhart.
I did Newhart. I did Newhart. I loved Newhart. What a cast.
Yeah.
What a cast. Not least of which is, what's his face? William Sanderson as Larry, of the Larry, Daryl, and Daryl.
Who's a great, serious actor.
Oh, he's phenomenal in Deadwood.
Yeah.
He's Eustace Farman.
Blade Runner, like just a billion things that he's amazing in.
Terrific actor. Really terrific actor.
Tom Poston.
Newhart, Tom Poston. And then years later when I worked with Julia Duffy and she played my mom on a pilot that did not air because they'd stopped doing that in the 80s, I was beyond starstruck that Julia Duffy was playing my mother.
Even though she's the most down-to-earth, nicest person.
So down-to-earth, so easygoing. That was a pretty intense, wonderful moment. And she's just got this bitchy dryness that is really fun to listen to. Yeah. She's great.
And she knows exactly what she's doing with it, too. It's not like they cast her because that's how she is.
Ooh, yeah.
She knows that comedy muscle that she's just like, that. I'm good at that.
Yeah, it's not, what's her face? It's not Georgia Engel from the Mary Tyler Moore Show. No. She knows exactly. Georgia Engel was one of those people where you just kind of pointed a camera at her and like, she's going to deliver this way and that'll be great. Julia Duffy knows exactly what she's doing. It's very precise.
When I first met her, I embarrassingly had to tell her my favorite Stephanie lines. But like one of my favorite jokes ever on the show is the Halloween episode, which is really funny anyway. It's called "Take Me to Your Loudon," and it's like a War of the Worlds parody.
Oh my god!
And George is dressed as the Cowardly Lion, and Stephanie comes in and gives him coffee. He's like, "Hey, Stephanie, guess who I am?" And she goes, "Joanna." Because they have the big hair, because he looks like Mary Fran, and he's like, "No, I'm the Cowardly Lion." And she goes, "Well, you should wear a name tag or something, because everyone's going to think you're Joanna." It's so funny. And they got a joke in that episode that's really dirty, and I was surprised. So everyone's accusing everyone else of being an alien by the end.
Yeah.
And she points at Joanna and she goes, "When we go into town, she's always buying batteries." And she goes, "Stephanie."
Oh God.
And I'm like, wow, I can't believe they got that on. But yeah,
that's such a layered 80s dirty joke.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where like my mom might have laughed and then be like, "I'll explain it when you're older."
Yeah, and I never will. Hopefully you forget.
Yeah.
So that's Monday. Tuesday night, what'd you do?
Tuesday would have been an interesting night. I'm looking at that night and I would have done something. I would have argued with my mom about this. And hopefully would have prevailed, and I would have watched the 2-hour John Ritter movie, Sunset Limousine. I was a huge John Ritter fan, but my mom wouldn't let me watch Three's Company because she thought it was garbage. And I knew it. Part of me was like, wasn't able to put into words like, okay, what I would say now is, okay, the writing is trash, but you are watching a commedia dell'arte level clown at the peak of his powers, mother.
Yeah.
Unable to do that. I was just like, but he's funny.
It's a funny show, though.
He's funny.
She didn't think it was dirty, offensive. She said it was a bad show.
Yeah, because we watched Soap, and so it was not a question of the content being inappropriate. It was a question of the writing just being crap.
Yeah.
Soap was infinitely more filthy.
Oh, God, yeah.
And infinitely edgier. But it had this sort of, it was critically acclaimed or whatever, and it had this sort of facade of class.
Right.
And even though it's ridiculous.
Just as trashy, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous. Three's Company was viewed as trashed because of Suzanne Summers and a lot of other things that were going on, and Norman Fell spiking the camera and stuff. But I found him and find him to be just endlessly fascinating and such an interesting comedic actor that I would have fought really hard to watch anything he was in. I remember going to see Hero at Large, which was his feature film,
which is great.
It's really good. I saw it twice. I would have seen that was a joint custody movie, meaning I saw it with my mom on one weekend and my dad on another.
Did you have to pretend you hadn't seen it already?
I think so. And it was, I just found him endlessly appealing.
Yeah. You know what movie I love that no one ever seems to mention is Real Men, with him and Jim Belushi?
Oh, I remember when that was out.
It's great. And he's amazing in it. It's
well,
really
he was,
good.
I mean, people understood what they were working with, and you keep going, and like Peter Bogdanovich worked with him. I mean, people understood that this was a great talent who
Blake
had this
Edwards.
money gig, and he was doing Broadway near the end of his life. He was a respected comedic actor, and everyone in the business seemed to understand that, like, listen, Three's Company notwithstanding, this guy is a unique talent.
Yeah.
And I, again, did not have the words or the wherewithal to defend my fandom, but I would have fought very hard to watch Sunset Limousine, and that would have taken me through till 10 o'clock.
Have you seen Sunset Limousine?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other appeal is he's trying to be, he's an amateur stand-up comic who drives limousines in LA in the 80s. And I actually rewatched this recently. It's streaming on Amazon Prime.
Is it really?
A ton of made-for-TV movies recently got dumped onto Amazon Prime.
Really?
And their search function's not great, so you kind of
really
have to
give to know
specifically
exactly the
search
word for it. Yeah.
But this one is on there, and I remember watching it as a kid and loving it because it was like everything I wanted in the world. And it's really entertaining.
I bet it's got great old LA locations,
and
too.
He's great in it, and it's really good.
Hero at Large is an amazing New York movie because so much of it is Times Square in the 80s, and that's gone, completely gone. Yeah. So it's a great, the locations in that movie are a character unto themselves.
It's the same Times Square as Basket Case. Which is weird.
It's a couple blocks away.
Yeah,
the opening scene of Hero at Large, they're walking north on 7th, and if you go like a block and a half over, you're in Belial's hotel.
Yeah. Which is to see those shots at the same time. But yeah, I love that movie. And then there's another movie he did called it's a movie about Frank L. Baum called The Dreamer of Oz, and it came out in 1990, and he plays Frank L. Baum, and it's him and
I'm writing this down.
Oh my God, I forgot her name. She's married to Michael McKean.
Ned O'Toole.
Ned O'Toole plays his wife.
Oh, really? I love her.
It's a period piece, and it's about him creating Wizard of Oz, and it's really bittersweet and funny and sad, and he's so good in it, and it's the kind of thing where you're like, God, I wish I got to see him in more drama stuff.
Yeah,
because he's just awesome.
Yeah,
like, he's just so good.
He's great in Sling Blade, and then he's I think what ended up being his last film was Bad Santa, and he's fantastic in Bad Santa.
Actually, he's directed by Ronnie Yu in Bride of Chucky. He's the corrupt sheriff.
Oh my God,
and he's terrifying. He's really good. So that's all night. Wednesday, what are you doing?
Okay, so Wednesday is an interesting night. I think I might have missed a slot, but 8 o'clock. Out of curiosity, I watched the Stir Crazy pilot.
Yes,
I watched the adaptation of the Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor film, directed by Sidney Poitier, unless I'm mistaken.
Yep.
I watched Stir Crazy, which I remember in looking that over, that they set it up like The Fugitive, like they're on the run. They're not in jail, but they're on the run, and they're trying to figure out.
Because the original movie is just them in jail.
It's just them in jail and them plotting an escape and then getting released or getting exonerated mid-escape.
Right. Which there's no more plot to do.
No.
So how do you make a TV series on that?
So it's them. It's basically Comedy Fugitive.
Right. Larry Riley and Joseph Gazaldo are in it. I don't know either of them.
Don't know either of them.
The biggest star in this is, as Captain Betty, Polly Holliday, who had just come off Alice. Alice had just ended the year before.
She would have just come off Flo.
Flo, the spinoff, in Gremlins. She's in Gremlins.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
But this did not.
Gremlins is a great cast. You forget how good. I forget that Glenn Turman is in Gremlins. And he's excellent in it. Yeah,
I love that movie. But this didn't go very long. No. Bustin' Loose with Jimmy J. Walker went for like 3 seasons.
Did it really?
It went in. I think it moved into first run syndication, so it did. Wow. It made that route.
Yeah.
But this one, not so much.
No. and it's also an hour long, which is weird.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like as far as hour long comedies go, this is the same year Moonlighting starts, and Moonlighting did great.
Yeah, but was a total anomaly.
A total anomaly.
Nothing about that show should have worked.
No, it's almost the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
But it's and I think it would have lasted even longer. It got boned by a writer's strike, as I recall.
And the two leads who would not work together.
Compatible,
Which is, I had Curtis Armstrong on, and Curtis talking about basically how they turned that show into the show about him and Elise Beasley because the other two just wouldn't come out. He told me the best Sybil Shepherd story where first day on set, he's never met her, and he's excited about being on the show, and he runs into her, and he's like, I'm just, thank you for having me on the show. I'm really great to be working with you. I really enjoy your work. And she goes, you better stop complimenting me, which he thinks is like a joke.
Right.
She would say that. And he's like, oh yeah, I know. Well, you're great. And she bursts into tears and was like, I told you not to do that. Goes in her trailer, locks herself in, shooting done for the day. It was like that all the time on that show.
That's exhausting.
And Bruce Willis just being a complete asshole to everybody, like from day one. Like before he even got famous, he was always just like constantly being really mean to Curtis, playing like real mean-spirited pranks on him.
They were so charming.
Oh yeah.
I loved that show.
Again, that's why it shouldn't have worked. Like two people who were unpleasant at the time to everybody, but on screen, like you just want to watch them forever.
Yeah.
And again, supporting cast, amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So many great guests on there.
And fourth wall breaking. Almost every episode.
Tons of it.
Like mind-blowingly fourth wall breaking.
Yeah.
There were episodes where they're literally like, they'd shoot new things for a repeat, and we're like, we don't have a new episode this week because we just couldn't get it together. So it's a rerun. What?
Or they do a music number out of nowhere.
Yeah. Just crazy. And the other hour-long show, again, stir crazy, is the second season opener of Highway to Heaven.
Yeah, I wouldn't have watched that.
No.
That wouldn't have been my thing.
Joshua Miller's in this one.
Josh Miller.
From the son of Jason Miller.
From The Exorcist?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. By the way, when Max von Sydow died this week, I was struck to find out that he was 43 at the time. Younger than I am now when he shot The Exorcist. That was humbling.
Didn't you play a character named Max von Sydow?
I did. That's funny. You should remember that. On Children's Hospital, I was Dr. Max von Sydow. You are correct. One of the weirder jokes on a show filled with weird jokes.
Weird joke. And then what'd you do?
9 o'clock I would have watched, and I think I did watch the Flip Wilson show with Gladys Knight.
Charlie and Company?
I like Flip Wilson a lot, and I found him really engaging and funny. And I don't remember anything about it, but I think I probably watched that. But that's only a half hour. I don't have a 9:30 written down.
So I get good news for you at 9:30. But Flip Wilson, it was like, this was, I think they had
a straight ahead family sitcom.
Yeah, they had a house full of, I think they might have been foster kids, but it was like, we got like 10 kids in the house, which was like the company.
Charlie and Company. There you go. Yeah.
Flip Wilson's a weird one because he was such a massive star.
Yeah.
And he never comes up. Especially never comes up when they're talking about like people of color in the industry.
No.
Never.
No. And hosted his own variety show in the 70s.
Which was massive.
Massive. And he is not part of the pantheon. And I'm not sure if it's... it's not for me to say why he's not heralded, especially in this post-Cosby economy. You think people would go back and give him a re-examination, But it's... it's a very interesting
No one's ever been able to explain to me. I've never heard anything like that he did anything. And it's not like his show was like offensive. Like it was pretty standard stuff. Like, funny enough, but like huge. Like
and it was funnier than a lot of 70s variety show. I mean, you put it up against like Donnie and Marie or the Brady Bunch Variety Hour. It's closer to Carol Burnett in that, in just really silly, funny sketch with celebrity guests and very straightforward stuff. I'm not sure why he isn't in like part of the canon of 70s performers. Yeah.
Or even brought up. So at 9:30, there was a show that was on just this season, went 13 episodes, and it was called George Burns Comedy Week. And it was an anthology comedy show. And I had originally thought that it was a Burning Off pilot show, but as I researched more, it wasn't. Okay. It was written to be a variety show. And it was basically a self-contained sitcom half hour every week.
Oh, wow.
And with guest stars, but the core cast was the SCTV cast.
Really?
So Catherine O'Hara's in this one. This is George Burns provides prologues and epilogues for this anthology, which begins with a romantic comedy featuring SCTV network alumna Catherine O'Hara as an escaped mental patient whose pliable mind responds instantly and expertly to suggestions such as that of a police lieutenant played by Tim Matheson who thinks she's armed with a bomb. So, like, Eugene Levy was in this, Joe Flaherty was in this, Dave Thomas.
Oh, my God.
And so every week it would be a mixture of these people, and they did 13 episodes, and there's some really funny stuff in it.
Oh, that's interesting. I'd love to see that. I would watch that. That would be my 9:30 watch. You know, what I've also tried to find on YouTube is Carol and Company, the 90s sketch comedy with Peter Krause as part of her rotating cast, and
Amy Sedaris is a cast member.
Yeah, and somebody else. I think it's Jeffrey Jones. No, that isn't right. Somebody else.
Richard Kind?
Richard Kind.
Yes,
That's right. Richard Kind is on it.
I have a few episodes of it.
Oh, really?
I can copy them for you.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see that. That was, and that was the same sort of thing too. It was like one
half-hour sketch. Yeah. The one I have is Amy Sedaris is Carol Burnett's daughter, and they're like trapped. They're being held hostage in their apartment. It's like a weird. They're having a dinner party, and somehow they get held hostage, and it's like the whole half hour.
They're basically just one-act plays at that point. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, in bottle episode, it's like one room, one-act play, and just weird.
There's one where they're stuck in like an ATM vestibule, I want to say, and Peter Krause is a surfer dude. But it's so interesting that you look in hindsight to recognize that Peter Krause cut his teeth doing sketch comedy on TV. Yeah. It's just really strange.
Did you ever see the Dom DeLuise show from the mid-'80s?
Probably, but I don't remember it.
Technically a sketch show, but the premise is Dom DeLuise is a barber. And so he has guests on that he interviews while he cuts their hair, like celebrity guests, like Burt Reynolds and stuff. And then sketches will just break out, or like a band will come in and play, and it's real weird. Yeah. But using those sort of 70s comedic performers and these weird 80s formats where they were trying to do different bizarre stuff was always fascinating.
Yeah.
Even though the Carol and Company was 90s. Thursday night, what'd you do?
Oh, by the way, Wednesday I would have stayed up late to watch St. Elsewhere at 10.
See, I would have gone Equalizer. But I just really like Edward Woodward and Violence.
I love both, but I was for St. Elsewhere was like my first kind of grown-up show.
Yeah.
And when it was ridiculous, especially as it went on, it got really silly and weird and self-referential.
Ending of St. Elsewhere.
Yeah. That's the first time I was ever like, what just happened? Mm-hmm. This TV show basically mugged me.
Yeah, which I don't think anyone was like perfect.
Yeah.
You know?
No,
just
it's a mess. It's a mess.
Have you ever seen that guy's essay that was like in the early days of the internet? He linked the St. Elsewhere verse and managed to prove all these other shows took place in that kid's mind too, based on crossovers and stuff.
Oh, wow. Well, you can link Cheers, because the doctors all went to Cheers one time.
Yep. And there were guest stars playing their characters on other shows in a few different episodes.
Yeah.
And so through that, it was like 400 shows took place in this kid's mind.
That's incredible. Take that, Avengers.
Yeah.
Thursday would have been the most basic night. You just, in New York, you turned to Channel 4 and you left it on.
Yep.
So I would have watched Cosby Show, which is the other sitcom that shot in New York.
Yep.
Earl Hyman was a neighbor. He played the grandfather.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love him so much. Yeah. Whenever he would show up, like the card game episodes, I'm like, amazing.
Yeah.
And I only knew that they shot in New York because the kids from those shows and Kate Now would always show up in the Macy's parade.
Amazing. Carl Payne, Cockroach, went to my junior high.
Oh, really?
He was a year or two ahead of me at Wagner Junior High. So Cockroach was on TV, and that was mind-blowing. Or Carl Payne, rather, who was Danny Zuko in Wagner's Grease.
Oh, wow.
With Alex Desert from Swingers and Becker as Kinnicky.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. This is the worst part about growing up in New York City, is that you're not even the most famous person you went to. You can be on TV. You have 100 TV credits. You're still not the most famous person who went to your junior high or your high school. It's maddening.
Did you watch Head of the Class?
Yeah.
Because that's just what I picture when someone's like, I grew up in Manhattan and went to high school. I'm like, oh, Head of the Class? Was it exactly like Head of the Class?
No, but that building is where I took the SATs.
Yeah.
It was the high school. What high school was that? But it was right south of Gramercy Park, and and they didn't give the SATs at my high school, so I had to go across town to that high school. Was it John Tyler?
They're like, go to the Head of the Class school.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. I loved Head of the Class. And speaking of crushes, Simone owns my heart.
Oh God, yeah. She still looks the same.
I know.
Exactly the same.
I know. What redhead ages like that? It's like her and Julianne Moore. It's bananas.
How has this happened?
Yeah, so I would have done that. I would have gone into Family Ties from there, which it's amazing to think that Family Ties didn't lead its hour.
Yeah.
But there was a while where it was still a relatively new show. You know, so Scott Silveri was the creator of Speechless, and his father-in-law was the late Gary David Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sidhu Busit?
yeah, and we spent an afternoon one time just reminiscing about our favorite Michael J. Fox line readings. And I would say, you know, it was amazing. And he'd go, who's using it tonight? And I said, yes, that's incredible. The setup for that joke being that Mallory is talking about her boyfriend, Nick. And she says, it's like we share the same brain. And the camera cuts to Michael J. Fox and he starts to smirk. And the audience knows something's coming, but they don't know when or what it's going to be. And he times it out perfectly and then says, but who's using it tonight? And destroys. But he was... there was just no one who was better at the multicam wisecrack in the 80s as being like the smartest person in the room and being able to deliver these zingers. You know, Nick comes over for dinner and says, do you guys always eat this way? And Michael J. Fox goes, with utensils? And just every single line was like an assassin's work.
One of my favorites that sticks out is Mallory goes, there's a little voice in my head that says, and he goes, I can see for miles in here. And I always remember that joke as a kid.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, there was nothing like it. There was absolutely, he was so goddamn good at that gig.
And a character that shouldn't have been likable on paper.
No, not at all. It really is an amazing premise, and I think we're maybe due for a re-examination of that idea of like the liberal parents and the conservative kid. I think you could probably do a fairly successful reboot. And I don't think reboots should be as common as they are, but I think that one was such a strong premise of like these boomer hippies giving birth to a Reaganite conservative is you could swing that around again now. Absolutely. And it would be really interesting, I think.
Michael Gross is one of my all-time favorites as well. Like just such an underrated, like slow burn straight man character. Like just he's so good on that show.
Yeah, no, he was one of the people we talked about when we were putting together Jimmy DeMeo on Speechless, of just this ice guy, just super cool, calm. Jimmy wasn't quite as nerdy as Michael Gross, but there was something about his port in a storm quality that was aspirational to me as an actor, where I was like, yeah, that's the move. That's what one of the things we're going for, where he is not the smartest guy in the room, but the coolest guy in the room.
And feels like a dad.
Yeah.
Like the way that you look at, even if someone's not a great dad, like as a kid, you're like, you look to them for sort of guidance and comfort and a centering thing, which you do great on Speechless in that way.
Thank you.
Where it's like, there's a true relationship with the kids where, because one thing that sitcoms bothers me is they're like, kids aren't going to, this guy's an idiot. They have to parent him. Like this. And it's not like that.
No, it was never like that. He was still very much the father. He was still a very strong authority figure. He wasn't a buffoon, but nor was he, just constantly exasperated by everyone around him, like Cliff Huxtable was. Which was always, there was always this conservatism that cut through Cosby Show, where like, it's like, just let Theo get an earring. It's not the end of the world, for God's sake.
You shaved your head for a rap video?
Yeah, it's kind of like, all right, easy, buddy. But yeah, Michael Gross was great. And then 9 o'clock would have been Cheers. Absolutely would have been Cheers. But Shelley Long is still on the show.
Who is one of my favorite just comedic actresses, but just of ever. And her lack of, much like John Ritter, her lack of a respected movie career kills me.
Well, yeah, she was supposed to be challenging to be around. And I'm always hesitant to believe that when I first hear it, because there's a ton of misogyny. Like, oh, I'm sorry, was she a woman who had some opinions and therefore she's difficult?
She's difficult.
And I always take that with a grain of salt, but then you keep hearing the stories. I couldn't follow the show into Kirstie Alley.
Oh, really?
But I watched it religiously, and got so much out of it. That's my exposure to Othello, is that episode where what's-his-face comes back.
He's trying to kill her.
Yeah.
It's
this psycho's killing me.
Yep.
And Coach says, first line of Shakespeare I ever understood. So we'll watch that. And then 9:30 we're in Night Court.
Which I love.
Speaking of surgeons, John Larroquette.
Yeah. A very serious guy. I don't know if you've ever met John.
I have.
He's
I did
really
an episode of... he did a really good one-and-done show called Happy Family in the Aughts, and I tested for it, didn't get it, but then got a consolation prize of a nice plum guest role on its one season. And him, Baranski, Melanie Paxson, Jeff Davis, and I'm missing someone. I can't remember who the other actor was.
Well, the cast.
Really good cast.
Yeah.
Really good cast. Really good writing. Great jokes.
Although him and Baranski, I can't picture...
Worked great.
It really?
Worked great. Total pros.
Because they do sort of a similar vibe.
Yeah, but she played sort of a pill-addled, checked out, like I'm in denial about the world around me sort of thing. But what was interesting about watching Larroquette is that it's a Monday to Friday work week. He comes in on Monday, nails every single joke. That's the way the writers heard it. That's the way it is to be delivered. And then throughout the week, keeps tweaking it. And 9 times out of 10, he was right on Monday, but he keeps playing with his delivery throughout the week to see if maybe there's an even better way to do it. And because, you rehearse a multicam as you would a play. You start on Monday, you get a script on Monday, and you read it, and you keep rehearsing it, and there's tweaks throughout, and then you go up and put it on its feet on Friday night. And throughout rehearsals, I watched him adjust and shift things around a little bit, and it was wonderful to see. He was really great to watch. There was a line on Night Court where he's introducing himself to a client, and he goes, "Hi, I'm Dan Fielding." And the guy goes, "Dan Fielding, aren't you the guy who ran for district attorney against a dead guy and lost?" And he, without music, goes, No, you're thinking of Dan Fielding."
Yes.
says the exact same name.
Yep.
And it was so perfect.
And he sells it. Like the guy
sells
kind of
that.
buys
The guy's
it.
like, "Oh, all right, I guess it's glorious."
Everyone, I rewatched that show, and it's sillier than I remember.
Oh, it's much sillier,
kid,
much broader.
but just so good. And actually, my favorite underrated sort of character on that show who I've appreciated as an adult is Mac.
Yeah.
Because he's got such funny stuff that on the 10th time I watched an episode, and I know, he's just so great. And there's a line I always remember where Quan Lee is cooking Thanksgiving dinner and she's pregnant.
Yes.
And he's like, "Quan Lee, I'm trying to eat." She's like, "I'm just cooking things that I think you'll like." And he goes, "Giblet pancakes?" He's so exasperated by this. Oh, it's great.
My wife did a pilot for Showtime years ago, and they cast
Charles Robinson.
Charles Robinson. And
who was in Russ Meyer movies.
Was he really?
Yes.
Oh, I got to go back. He was perfect, and he's just so good. She showed me his tape, and this is one of those 2-year things where I don't think she watched Night Court. I did,
right?
And we had that little bit of a gap between our media consumption. And he goes, "We got Charles Robinson audition." And I was like, first of all, just book him. B, fuck you all for making him audition.
Yeah.
He's a straight offer. And then she showed me the tape, and I was like, "Yeah, look at him. He's fantastic."
Yeah. And
he's
fantastic. He shows up in I see him in a commercial every now and then, but he doesn't pop up in all that stuff.
No,
I think he did Superior Donuts. I think he might have done a guest spot on Superior Donuts.
Oh, really?
But that was the last comedy I've seen him do. And I'm like, he's so good.
He's so dry and so good. And that show, as Night Court went on, it got weirder. And I remember one episode where they flashed back to his service in Nam, which was bonkers. But platoon members die and stuff. And for a show that was basically built around a comedy magician, it got pretty serious sometimes, but delightful.
And that show, like Newhart, I have a theory that if a show goes more than 5 seasons, it gets bizarre, even if it doesn't intend to. And in the final season, there's an episode where it's one of the classic Night Courts where, for some stupid reason, they have to have 100 cases done by midnight, or I don't know, the place gets shut down, whatever they have. So it's just case, joke.
Yeah.
And there's one scene where the camera's on Harry, and he's yelling at the defendant, and he's like, "You got to stop harassing him. Leave this person, leave him alone, whatever." And they cut to the defendant and the litigant, and it's animated Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. It's animated Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, and they just kind of roll their eyes, and then it's on to the next case. And as a kid, I was like, what the hell just happened? Like, it blew my mind.
There's an amazing Night Court joke one time where an old couple, like octogenarians, come in to finalize their divorce, and they need the judge to do that. And he's just bewildered. And Harry goes, well, you guys are in your 80s. Why did it take you so long to get divorced? And the dad deadpans, we were waiting for the children to die. And it laid me out. That is still one of the darkest, funniest jokes that's ever been on network TV.
Yeah.
Bonkers how good that is.
There's an episode where a guy gets arrested and he's a Nielsen family. And he's like, you got to let me out. Like, I have to watch these shows. It's important.
That's right. And he's remember this.
The last time I got sick or I had to go to the hospital and like some show got canceled. And so at the end of the episode, to come bail him out is Brendan Tartikoff. As Brendan Tartikoff. He's like, yeah, well, we kind of need him. We're debuting. And I forget what show it is, but it's literally a show that's really debuting.
Oh,
and he's like,
God.
I kind of need him. And as a kid, I was like, what?
That's insane. I got to go back and watch Night Court. I bet my kids would love Night Court.
I'd be curious to see what
I bet my
like.
kids would love Night Court.
Are there any shows you grew up watching that you tried to show them that you thought they would love and they didn't, or that they really loved and you were surprised?
We haven't really tried to go too far back. My daughter found Friends on her own during its Netflix domination, and she loved it. Loved it.
That's this generation's Brady Bunch, I've discovered.
Yeah, but with really good jokes,
right?
With really solid actors, and it's great too. God bless my daughter. She absolutely is like, oh yeah, no, it's Chandler and Phoebe, and then everybody else, it's Chandler and Phoebe. I'm like, yes, that's correct. All due respect to the rest of them, but it's Chandler and Phoebe.
Yeah, they carry that shit.
So I haven't really. I'm trying to think what I would introduce them to that I know they would dig. I want to try Cheers. Definitely want to try Cheers. The problem with Friends is that Friends is like Star Wars. Like, it's very good, but it ruined TV afterwards, because then you had to have 6 really good looking people in your show.
Yeah.
And the era of the workplace comedy with real people was gone.
Yeah.
And I grew up thinking like, oh, Judd Hirsch, that's your lead.
Yeah.
Judd Hirsch is your sitcom lead.
Yeah.
That's number one on the call sheet is Judd Hirsch. And then if you want to go see a romantic comedy, it's Elliot Gould and Walter Matthau.
Right. Bob Newhart.
Yeah. I came into this business just with very skewed expectations of what a character actor could accomplish. And I've landed on my feet. I'm okay. But it is striking what Friends did. And the same way Star Wars killed the New Hollywood.
Yeah.
And it's great, but it killed the New Hollywood.
Yeah, and there were things we liked about that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, we people blame Jaws for the rise of the blockbuster, but Jaws is 3 middle-aged men on a boat.
Yes.
And your young hunk is Richard Dreyfuss.
Yes.
And so it's still, and also you don't see the shark for an hour 15.
Right.
It's still a 70s New Hollywood film school generation piece
Grim
of work.
movie.
Yeah. But then Star Wars comes along, and everyone's 20. The oldest person in the cast is 31, and he's gorgeous. He's Harrison Ford, and like that's this is what movies are now. Sorry, these are movies now. Yeah, get used to it.
I remember a late night booker who I won't name once told me, "Look, you're a generic white guy. We can get someone funnier than you to write something for someone better looking than you."
Wow.
And I was like, I know that's true, and I knew that was true before you said it.
Could you say that behind my back?
But
maybe would it kill
I
you?
didn't really need to hear that. Yeah, and it's the kind of thing where it's like,
Jesus.
thanks, and that's true. That's what they do. Everyone else, it's. Oof.
So I'm curious to see like if something like, I think she might dig Cheers because it's young Michael from The Good Place.
Yeah.
She might enjoy seeing that, and it's young Michael from The Good Place, and then eventually it's Haymitch from Hunger Games, and I think my daughter might latch onto that. My big thing, the big heartbreak this week was a couple weeks ago, David Byrne was on SNL, and he was fantastic, and I tried to show them Stop Making Sense.
Oh, I saw you post that.
Yeah, and they got up and walked out of the room 3 songs in. I was like, but wait, the whole band comes on one by one. Stick around, you monsters.
What about True Stories or something like that?
I might try True Stories.
Yeah.
True Stories might be weird enough that they might really dig it.
Yeah, because that movie seems so weird, timeless.
Yeah.
I'm like, this could be made now. It could be from the 60s.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's so, it was out of its time in 1986. It's out of its time now.
Goodman's so good. good in that.
Goodman's so good, and he tells some interesting stories about it. He did Marin a few months ago.
Oh, I haven't heard it.
And he doesn't do a lot of interviews.
Yeah.
But he did Marin, and when they're not talking about cocaine, they talk about true stories, and it's interesting to listen to.
I heard, I've told them on the show before, so I won't bore everyone now, but I can tell you later. But Curtis Armstrong has some very, very good John Goodman stories from Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh, I bet.
And cocaine.
I bet.
And Ted McGinley stories that are very funny.
Amazing.
Because McGinley was super straight-laced. Like, he was literally like all-American quarterback.
He's that guy.
Very innocent.
Really?
And, they were all smoking pot, and he had some in the scene in Revenge of the Nerds where Takashi's going, nothing. They ad-libbed that because it literally was exactly what happened with McGinley the night before.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Wow.
All the best stuff in that movie was ad-libbed.
I'm not shocked.
Including, you have a room? Is there a room for... Who are you? What do you want? Is there a room for... It's not for rent. Fuck off. That was their prop guy, who was this English guy, and they had shot the scene before and it didn't work, so they just made that scene up. And it's literally their prop guy through the mail slot just made that up. And Curtis had no idea what he was going to say. And it's so funny.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I
There's
love
stuff in that movie that really doesn't age well.
Oh, absolutely.
But there are some very funny real moments.
Yeah.
And it's Anthony Edwards and Robert Carradine. You know?
Yeah. So Friday night, final night of the week.
So Friday night is interesting. Friday night is a tough one. Friday night is me giving Knight Rider one last chance before I outgrow it completely.
Yeah. And this is long in the tooth, Knight Rider. This is fourth season.
Yeah. And it's an absurd premise that has been stretched way past its breaking point. And they're starting to do that thing where they can't afford actual needle drops, so they have very faithful covers of songs in an effort to match MTV and Miami Vice. And it's not quite working.
There's a lot more montage as they go.
Yeah, but they'll have like a shitty version of Rebel Yell over the beginning of Knight Rider.
This episode, Nick Worth is in it.
Nick Worth.
Nicholas Worth was in Don't Answer the Phone.
Oh, yeah.
He's the murderer.
Oh, wow.
He's in... Wes Craven used him in a bunch. He was in Deadly Grounds, and he's in Swamp Thing. He's a real big guy.
Oh, yeah.
But he was a devout Catholic and was like praying, reading the Bible all the time and in these horror movies. And then he showed up as a thug in like weird 80s
I gotta
movies. So it's always weird that he's in, whenever I would see him in something like Knight Rider, I'm like, oh, it's Nicholas Worth. And it's just weird that he shows up in these things. This season of Knight Rider does a Halloween episode, and it's some Halloween ball that Michael Knight has to go infiltrate, and they clearly just use whatever costumes they had in the warehouse, but it's all the masks from Halloween 3.
Oh my God.
With the silver shamrock thing.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just like, I don't know, grab a bunch of stuff, get some masks, it's fine.
Happy Halloween. Yeah, sure.
It's really weird because it's like, oh, it's David Hasselhoff and then the mask from Halloween 3.
Great. Sign me up.
Yeah.
So this would have been my, like, I was beginning to realize that I was outgrowing this show and that it was for children and ridiculous. So I would have been giving, and then at 9:00, I would have yielded to my mom for Spencer for Hire.
I love Spencer for Hire.
I do too, and I like the books even. I've actually read a couple of the books. Well, of course, you're from Boston, so it's.
I used to go watch them film.
Yeah, it's required reading.
This is the debut.
Yeah, and I feel like it's Uric was so charming. Avery Brooks was great.
Yep.
And what it did that I don't think this Mark Wahlberg one is going to do is remember the book's literary roots.
Yeah.
Spencer's a voracious reader, and whenever people ask how he spells his name, he says with an S, like the poet.
Yep.
Referring to Edmund Spencer, who wrote the Fairy Queen medieval epic. And it's possible that Mark Wahlberg has read the Fairy Queen, but it's not likely.
He hasn't.
And I feel like there was something about the OG Spencer from the 80s that is really charming. And Mantegna did a good version, too, in the 90s. They brought it back.
Oh, yeah, they did. And they did, but they shot in Toronto.
Yeah.
It didn't quite, like, I mean, I love the show anyway. It has a special place in my heart because obviously it's Boston.
My mother-in-law was an extra on an episode.
Everybody who grew up in Boston was. That was
okay.
There was every decade in Boston has a big lie. And in the 80s, it was, my uncle was a killer on Spencer for Hire. And a lot of people were. In the 90s, it was, Yeah, I kicked Marky Mock's ass once. And like that, it was just, I don't know, it's so weird that these do these things.
Sort of collective unconscious.
Yeah,
it's sort of a mass hallucination.
Right, 70s was, I was like, no, I was in Friends Eddie Coyle. I got cut out. You know?
Oh my God! Let the record show I have just collapsed on a couch. Oh my God! I got cut out of Friends of Eddie Coyle.
Is that Friends Eddie Coyle? No, I was like a guy who sells stuff at the Garden. It was like whatever. But Spencer.
Yeah, Mitchum punches me at Shaw's.
Yeah. No, I hung out with Rob Mitchum. Yeah, we did calypso music for like an hour. It was fun. But it's the Boston I grew up in, literally.
Yeah.
And so it's so cool to see.
Of course.
But also, like, the character actors that pop up on that show.
Well, it's all New York theater guys. It's all the New York theater guys being brought up, or guys from ART and the Huntington.
Yep. And so the first episode, Jeffrey Lewis is in it. Chuck Connors is King Powers, the big mob boss. Every single shootout takes place in front of the channel. Like, it's just great. And it is a good show. Like, the tone is really good.
Yeah.
And when I compare it to something like Hunter, which was a contemporary show that was pretty much the same show, but in LA.
Yeah.
It's smarter. It's more thoughtful. The plots are better. Although I do always joke that Boston would be completely out of scumbags because Spencer kills like 40 every episode.
Yeah.
It's like there's not enough henchmen left. Like there's nobody.
Yeah.
But like.
And Hawk kills unarmed guys.
Oh, all the time.
Hawk will kill an unarmed man.
And A Man Called Hawk, terrible spinoff.
Yeah, mess.
Didn't work.
Hard mess.
But it really holds up, and I rewatch it often.
Oh yeah.
Second season dips a little bit when the girlfriend leaves and then she comes back. It's better, but
I love the books. The books are
great.
Great little. They're light reads. It's great for like you take them onto a plane.
Yeah.
Take them onto a plane, and you're done by the time you land.
Yeah.
And you've had like
they're good little potboiler mysteries.
Yeah, he walks around. He interviews he needs to find a whorehouse, so he interviews a taxi driver at Kenmore Square. Great,
right,
fine,
right.
check. It's delightful.
Goes into the combat zone, shakes down a bartender. Are you vegetarian or anything?
I'm not.
In the North Shore of Boston, if you find yourself in that area again, there's a place that's been around forever called Carl's Sausage Kitchen, and it has a little cafe. It's like an old Polish supermarket, and food's really good. But it's featured as key plot points in 2 Spencer novels.
Really?
And they have them up on the wall.
Oh, that's great.
And it's just kind of fun to go. The food is good. You go to breakfast or whatever, but you're like, oh, this is in the Spencer novel, and it's one of the few places mentioned that still exists.
Oh, wow.
The Boston I grew up in is gone.
Of course.
It's totally gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it. I love it.
That's so cool.
I totally.
But yeah, so my mom was a massive Robert Urich fan, a massive mystery
from like
novel
Vegas
fan.
or from
Vegas. But then when they were taking one of her favorite detectives and turning him into a TV show, she went all in and she got me into it, and I started reading the books, and it was something we shared. It's a very fond memory of my mom is her enjoyment of the Spencer TV show.
It's all 3 seasons are on DVD. It's not streaming, but it's worth picking up. Do you know why it ended? This breaks my heart. Did great ratings.
Yeah.
Great ratings. And it was the only show that ABC had that wasn't shot in LA. And the Teamsters strong-armed them. And they were like, we got a golden goose here. 3 seasons shows, like top 5 show. We'll hold them hostage, basically.
Oh, wow.
And ABC went, bye. Canceled the show. They called their bluff and just canceled. They're like, we don't feel like dealing with it. Canceled it. And for years, nothing was shot in Boston because of that.
Yeah.
It took almost 20 years before people would come back. We had like 2 movies after that.
Yeah.
One was Second Sight with John Larroquette and Bronson Pinchot, and Bess Armstrong, where Bronson Pinchot plays a psychic and John Larroquette is a detective, and they're forced to solve a murder.
Phenomenal.
And then Celtic Pride.
Sure.
The Judd Apatow movie.
Yeah.
But nothing. And it took until the 2000s before they started shooting stuff again because of that Spencer for Hire sort of shakedown.
Wow!
But they were still doing it. They did it to Padma on what's the chef?
Top Chef.
Top Chef. They shot in Boston, and the Teamsters shook her down, and it was a huge court case. They literally like came up to her car and they were like, "You pretty girl, shame something happened to you," like that kind of stuff.
Disastrous.
And it's like, oh man, that's the reason it ended, just because of that.
My big thing when I was watching The Irishman was who handled transpo for this movie?
Yes, yeah.
Who would have? How did they?
Yeah.
But then again, I also kind of don't want to know because I feel like I like that's maybe I'm not supposed to know how transpo worked on that film.
Yeah.
Shut up, John.
Yeah. It's because all those guys had worked on James at 15.
Oh God, yeah.
And then
what's that actor's name?
Lance Kerwin.
Who
was in Salem's Lot.
Right.
Which they shot as a pilot, actually, to be an ongoing series. That was their plan. If you remember the last scene in Salem's Lot where they have the blood and they're in South America and they're on the run from the vampires.
Oh, yeah.
They wanted to make that, also with Jeffrey Lewis, they wanted to make that an ongoing series, which thank God they didn't. It would have been awful. Which might be my favorite Tobe Hooper thing.
Oh, interesting. I should watch it again. I bet that's probably on Amazon Prime.
It is, yeah. Funhouse might be my favorite Tobe Hooper, actually. I love that movie.
Funhouse.
But to go full circle, to end here, and I'm sure you know this, Larroquette, opening crawl of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Because he went to college with
That's
with
right.
Tobe Hooper.
That's right. And it's such a distinctive voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah. It is it's one more reason to love that movie, you know? And then he did one of the reboots.
Oh,
he actually
did he do
the
the
voice of one
opening
of the reboots as just sort of a sweet little nostalgic thing.
Yeah.
Larroquette is a national goddamn treasure.
Yeah. Yeah. He was on Chuck. If you watch, where he plays that sort of alcoholic, failed James Bond. Amazing. Or Almost Human, was it? He was the villain.
I don't know if didn't watch Almost Human. He was on. He did a great West Wing, on West Wing as one of the attorneys general. I want to say. Anyway,
Boston Public or Boston Legal. One of them he was on.
Boston Legal, I think. He is. And I got to see him. You know who I saw? He was in another full circle. He was in that revival of The Best Man with Howard Sherman.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and a cell phone went off in the audience, and I thought Larroquette was going to kill someone with his hands.
Absolutely. Yeah, he does not suffer fools gladly.
No.
Yeah. Man, I got to go to more place. Well, thank you for doing this.
This was a delight, man. Thanks so much for having me.
That's John. Thanks again, everybody. Let me know what you've been watching or really anything. Feel free to interact with me. I'm also going to try to do some more live stuff online. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to try to post some old stand-up shows from my secret menu. I got to figure out a video editing software. I don't know. There's a lot of content out there. I know everyone has a podcast now and everyone's doing live stuff. So, maybe you don't need it from me. But if you do, let me know. And I am happy to provide it for you. So I'll be here next week, I guarantee you, and we'll be here for a brand new episode of TV Guidance Counselor.